Hi, welcome, welcome, welcome both. And Samar is here. Let's see if anybody else arrives. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Sash.
Hey, how's it going?
What time is it where you are, Sash?
3 a.m.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
You are a bit of a night owl, though, I think, aren't you?
Uh, yeah, I guess
Or is
so.
it, or
Yeah.
is it an early? You're sort of on that bridge, really, aren't you? Is it early or is it late?
Oh yeah, well, so I noticed it was 1 a.m. and I'm like, yeah, there's no way I'm gonna like sleep and get up, so I'm just gonna stay up.
Bless you. Bless
Yeah.
you. Good to have you. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no problem, Samaya. You're welcome to be here with the camera off. So this is a practice dojo, which is essentially group supervision. So it's where you can come with questions relating to specific case studies. So whereas outside the training, with inside the core training, questions like that, we keep to one-to-ones within the community here. You can bring case studies. You just keep them confidential, or you can ask questions generally about the material, people that you're working with, sort of more general. So, who has got questions that they want to bring today? It will help me kind of keep an eye on the time.
I do. Okay.
Sash, you've got a question. Is it a case study question or like a general question?
Oh, I forgot that I was on mic. It was gonna be a general question, but I'm just gonna get my book. So wait one
All
sec.
right, yeah, no problem. Christine, do you have any questions or a case study that you'd like to bring?
Not today that I can think of, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe something gets triggered later.
Okay, no problem. We might then, if we've just got the one, Samar, you're off camera, so I'm kind of assuming that you don't, but maybe you do. Maybe you have something that you want to kind of type in or just come in on voice. Just let me know so I can kind of just keep an eye on sort of timings. So Samar has something to type out. So just the two. So why don't we start with great case study. Why don't we start with 5-10 minutes, just a little bit of embodiment together, because we should have time to do that. And we can kind of, I don't know about you, but I've had a very kind of activating day in some ways, and I found myself kind of a little bit more in my neocortex than is comfortable for me. And I'm feeling it. And this is often how a lot of our clients arrive. So this is something that I took the US cohort when I was guest teaching the other week, just a little practice. It's kind of in the realms of suspension, but it's also kind of paying attention just to the quality of the mind. So suspension is kind of like basically I hold suspension as both the activity that we can offer, like, can you put your thoughts over into the other side of the room, but also it's an atmosphere that we create where body is just a little bit more in focus than the neocortex. And the neocortex we can think of as, often we think of it as the thoughts and the content, but actually it is a kind of muscle, right? It is a bit of tissue. There is something there. So by the nature of addressing it in this way and meeting it in that way, it can kind of just support a little bit of suspension. So that's the kind of background to it. So if you want to kind of get involved, I'm just going to talk you through the steps and you can make an informed decision. And then Sasha, what we'll do, we'll go to your question and then we'll go to Samar's after. Okay. So if you want to get involved, the process is, if you like, if there is a process, is to bring attention. So we'll just bring attention to what it's like to be us, including kind of like mind, body, just a general kind of check in. Notice what you notice. Then I'm going to invite you with some instructions to notice the area of the neocortex as a kind of muscle, as a tissue. so that we bring attention to it, and then we'll offer maybe a little bit of softening around that as well, and just see what happens with that invitation. So no right or wrong, it's always just a curious playground. So if you want to kind of get involved, you can do this with your eyes open or your eyes closed. And I'm just going to slow down my speech a little to get us into a little bit more of the other parts of our brain, which might kind of want to come online also as we do this. So the first invitation is to really kind of just check out the entirety of your landscape. So kind of checking out from where your toes are, right to the top of your head, the sides of your body, the back of your body, the front of your body. So you're getting this overall, just very generalized impression of your position, your body, and the kind of like the meta sort of side of your body, rather than the subtle sensations, just like the position, where you are in space. And then with a very loving and light kind of touch curiosity, just check out emotional body. And whatever's there's no right, no wrong. All turning up at different times of the day. We might have emotional content from the day, from the previous day. Just checking out what's in the emotional body. Maybe sadness, anger, maybe blank. And blank is something to notice too. And just again, very light touch to see if there's any sensations. It's kind of with a bit of general curiosity. We're not following the breadcrumbs per se or getting involved in anything major at this point. It's just a kind of a general oversee of the body and the sensations. And the next invitation is to bring your attention up to your overall head and face and check that out a little bit more specifically. Just kind of any tension, any places that feel resourceful, any sensation. Yeah, just generally kind of coming into contact with this area up here. And then the next invitation is to kind of bring a little bit of attention to the very front of your head. So where your neocortex kind of lives behind the top of your, lives behind your forehead, sorry, and the front of your skull. And you might even want to place a hand on your forehead just to kind of come into contact a little bit more. And use a little bit of kind of like the bridge between imagination. So you're imagining what the brain looks like and imagining that nestled in that area of your head. And come to kind of check it out as if you were checking out a muscle. So if it was a muscle, how would you describe it now? Is it relaxed? Is it bracing? Is it tight and ready to go? Is it tired? Is it blank? Is it neutral? Is it soft? And as you just kind of observe it in this way, notice what you notice in any shifts in that area or anywhere else in your body. You might even want to play around with the type of pressure of the touch. You might want to play around with having two hands, or you might want to drop the hands. Just see what touches feels good. And the next invitation is just if it is a bit tight, so mine's a bit tight today, if it is a bit tight, or if you notice kind of just a little bit of activity there, let's see what it would be like to invite that as a muscle, not the content, to soften just 1% more. What would happen if you invited that? You might even want to kind of just rest your forehead in your hand, so you're almost sort of tilting it so the forehead has a place to rest in your hand if you tilt your head forward. So it has this opportunity to soften and rest. And it may not want to soften, it may not want to rest. Just notice what happens with the invitation. And then final invitation is just to see what happens if you invite your eyes to soften just 1%. The eyes and the back of the eyes. Now notice what it's like to be you, no right, no wrong. And when you're ready, we'll start to land this little mini practice in any way that you wish. Opening your eyes probably last, but just kind of having a look around the room, a stretch, whatever it is that you need to do to just land from that little micro practice. How was that? Would anyone like to share anything about that little micro practice? Any reports back from your own experience or questions?
I liked that. I don't know that I've ever taken the time to notice if my brain feels tight.
Mm, mm,
And I did notice that, and it was an interesting
mm,
um, sensation to be with,
mm.
to notice. Um, and it felt good to notice it,
Yeah,
give it attention.
yeah. What did you notice by way of somatic experience when you gave it that attention? If you're open to sharing.
Yeah, at first when I put the hand there, it felt more pressurized.
Mhm,
So I took it off, and then it started to soften.
mhm.
But then later it was, the holding
Yeah.
came in, and then it really softened more, and there were lots of yawns and um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. A lot of pressure there today. I am so with you, Samar. That has been my day. Um, sometimes you maybe have seen me on demos or things, but sometimes and more often than not these days when I'm working with people on Zoom, I mean here I have a bed and things, but even on Zoom when you're working, sometimes you can just get an implicit sense that someone's carrying a lot in their neocortex. It's like their head looks like it's, you know, like it's almost, you get this sense that the head's almost too heavy for the body in that moment, right? Because it's energetically, it's carrying a lot. So in those moments, that's a useful thing. But often, I'll just start by saying, do you want to be up? Like, shall we give your head a rest? Do you want to kind of like lay down or even just kind of like really support your back on your head and on a sofa and actually pay attention to that? And it's quite remarkable what will happen when there's less energy taken up carrying this that's also carrying a lot of energetic stuff. So just a little thing that I wanted to kind of just share with you because that might be something for you to think about. And I know Samar, you said yes, so I'm guessing that feels resonant when you sort of sense sometimes that there's a lot to carry up here. So yeah.
I found it a really gentle and comforting and supportive practice. When sort of given the opportunity to place my hand on my head, I sort of just created like source or energy in my hand first and just kept it sort of like as a wave above my head. I felt more support that way. But then I found that to sort of relax behind my eyes a little
Yeah.
better. But then afterwards I did sort of cradle it shortly, my hand or into my head. It's quite good actually, because I think this year I've definitely found my neocortex or my crown chakra to be blocked at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a nice practice in easing things out and
Yeah.
creating space.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for that. So, shall we go into your question, Sash? Would you be okay to start?
Yeah, and for the life of me, I can't find it, so I'll have to. It's probably in another notebook. So my bad. I apologize.
That's all right. Do you want maybe Samar might start and then yours might come to you, or do you think you've got it? Do you think you'll be able to recall it? Tell me how you want to go, Sash.
Oh, I might be able to recall it, but I'll just we'll let Samar go first.
Shall we do that and then just give you a little time to recall it? Because yeah. And okay, so we'll
Okay.
definitely come back to you. Is that connected to the intuitive body? What did you mean by that, Samar?
I'm going to unmute. Can you hear me? They're
Yeah,
doing work.
I can.
Okay. They're doing work outside of my home and it's very loud. So I was asking if the neocortex if that's connected to the intuitive body because of where it is as far as chakras are concerned. Would you connect it that way?
So you've got the neocortex is actually made up of left and right hemisphere. So left is the logic processing part, and the right is kind of more connected to the work that we might do. So yes, intuition, the kind of implicit knowing, it has a lot more kind of direct connections with the limbic and brain stem. So yeah, part of it does. Part of it is the bit that can get us into bother. But is also useful, but tries to kind of work a little bit too hard, right?
Yeah. Well, my case study is how do you or how would you hold space for someone who they are in therapy, they are in treatment for mental health, but they struggle with splitting. So splitting their like personality, or there may be what if there may be like their voice changes and they suddenly embody almost a very completely different person. What would you find to be the best practice in holding space for this? I mean, a new person even in this session.
Okay. I mean, first of all, I would ask always, what is their what is their reason to be with you? Like, what is their, what's your contract? What's your objective? What's their intention?
Okay. So you're working and you're in the session, you've gone through the body drop, and you've called in the shared intention, and this person's, the client may be going through their experience, and then all of a sudden the I guess I'm not exactly sure how to say this, but the other personality would come through.
Yeah.
Would you speak with the other personality in this way?
I'll go on to that in a moment. The reason why I'm asking is because what I say may depend on the intention that they're coming to work with you for.
Yeah.
For example, if their intention is to work with my split personalities, and we're in the realm of dissociation here, and is it, if it is to work with that specifically, then that would be outside of scope of practice, I would think, for the majority of us. If their intention is something like, I I want to get in touch with my deeper feeling about my career or something like that, obviously there'll be some subtle differences, Samar. So I'm just curious, like, broadly speaking, what's brought them to you?
It would be, they are working through releasing expectations from others on themselves, something that would be within the scope of
Yeah.
our practice.
So releasing expectation, so the expectations that others have placed on them.
Right.
Okay. When you say that, and when you start to just bring this day one in, what comes up for me intuitively is that there's there's probably a high degree of childhood development trauma that might have some similar patterns to that intention in and of itself. So just, I don't know if that feels right or not, but just letting you know that's kind of one thing that's sort of coming up for me. And if you are butting kind of in that, I guess I would always kind of say they're in therapy they've got main support, you said, didn't you? You've got main kind of therapeutic support.
Correct.
Yeah, you can. And I'll just bookmark this and we can kind of come back to it. You can, in some instances, if it feels good, speak to an individual to see how they might feel and how their therapist might feel about you speaking to their therapist,
Okay.
so that you become part of the support team. That's something in Europe. I'm guessing that, a US would be at least open to you kind of saying, look, I'm part of the support team here for embodiment practices. I've got this email written permission from X, my client. I just really want to kind of dovetail the work, this, just to let you know, kind of, this is the approach that we're taking. If if there's anything that you want to kind of input, or vice versa. So that can happen where it's more, where someone is getting some support for more complex stuff. So that might feel a support to you. So I just want to kind of bookmark that as well, just as one point. going back to your original question about when the other personality comes in, I don't have any direct experience in this, Samar. So I might also just take this away, but intuitively what comes up for me is within the scope of practice and within the framework of within the framework of focalizing, I sit right back immediately into the 7 conditions, right? Because we're not going to toolkit our way through this one with somebody. But what we certainly can do, and I'm guessing might be supportive for their lived experience if they've maybe had kind of challenges with the personalities within their social settings and within their lived world and lived experience, is really meeting that with some no shame, no blame, and curiosity. So, you know, that's one thing that comes up. The second thing that comes up is, and I can talk through some ways to kind of meet that. But the second thing that comes up is, if this is like, releasing expectations that others have placed on them, that feels to me like a very kind of, oppressive, dominant parenting, potentially kind of something around that very early formative years, because that's where dissociation kind of starts very often. So something also comes up for me that it's something has gone beyond words, that's highly charged. So therefore, that's where the other voice has come in. So something comes up for me around this delicate dance of no shaming, no blaming,
Right.
resourcing, and taking lots of pauses. Like this would never look like a classic, whatever we think a classic session is, like we're in body drop all the time. It might be like kind of coming out and going, oh, right, okay. So, you might kind of work with this. So let's say that comes up. You might work with that personality for a moment or two, not de-shame it, like, what's it like to be you now, this different personality? Is there anything pleasant in your experience? Is it okay if I'm here with you? Right? Because they've shift person. Is it okay if I'm accompanying you in this moment? Check that connection is okay. And then, kind of bring to a little bit of a pause and landing. How about we check in? How about we take a moment to check in? And just maybe do a little bit of kind of psychoeducation around, the slow way, the fast way. Get curious with them, when the other personality comes in. Is that sometimes because they've been triggered? Have they noticed that? Because that might be something that you're curious about, and how can we work to kind of support that as a resource and also at the same time find other resources.
Beautiful. Great.
How did it feel in your body and your system when that happened?
In my body and system, I felt a deep wave of compassion, and just wanted to make the space as welcoming and inviting as possible, as resourced as possible. But yeah, in my body there was just a wave of deep compassion because of what you're really speaking to, which is probably a person may have had some very serious trauma early on in their life, you know.
Mm. Exactly, and that's why, that resonance of compassion, the resonance of the 7 conditions, and questions like, is it okay if I'm accompanying you in this moment?
Mm.
So you're reconnecting with that different part. So that different part has possibly felt very alone.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you reconnecting to that part might help reconnect to others, or more like home-based parts, let's say, by the nature of that. And certainly not, kind of make it kind of feel alone.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Thank you.
How was the end of the session? Was there any kind of discussion around that at the end of the session?
I tried not to speak directly to well, essentially what was on my mind was possibly speaking to the client, checking into to just get some feedback as to if there was any way that I could have resourced better, or if there was any other anything else they may have needed,
Mm.
um, you know, because like I said, I feel so very brand new to holding space for folks in this way, that um, and as you know, we can invite very tender, vulnerable space for folks to be in. So,
I hear that. Have you worked with them for a while, or is this a new person, just out of interest? Like, how many sessions are you in?
this is the third session. Yeah. And this actually happened earlier on in, I should say, not the third session, it's the third month. The I actually have not encountered this situation in a few weeks, actually. Um, and I've noticed there's been a lot more integration in
Mhm.
some of the things that we've been working on. So, but I just want to, if I like whatever tools that I can have in place, because, I also don't want this person to feel like they cannot bring all of themselves, but I'm getting the sense that it's not that they aren't bringing all of themselves. There's been a shift.
That makes sense. And by the end of that one session, were they sort of back in their kind of home base
Yeah.
personality, right?
Yeah.
And did you, because here's the thing, when with any type of a dissociation, what we're doing is kind of like no shaming, no blaming.
Mhm.
We can stop and we can resource. There's all of those different kind of things. But this notion of accompanying, and also, can we track? Can we really slow it down? Like, what happened? What was the moment? Can we track the moment back to,
Mm.
not to shame it or make it wrong, but to just be curious? Like, what is that like
Mm.
in your system that has created this really clever thing?
Mhm.
And then can we track you coming back? Like, what's the pathway of coming back? And when you can start to do that, very often it kind of, it's like not going from, you know, 0 to 60. You're kind of going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there becomes more like not conscious choice, but there becomes because the route is known a little bit more. There can be a little bit more around that. But that's, that's kind of that sort of technique I'd kind of be personally, I'd be wanting to kind of open up the discussion about that way of working and maybe bringing in just checking in with their kind of main support as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on some of what I was going to say. I was just going to ask basically for like ND folk and for them to gain a better sense of just sensing. So perhaps if they have alexithymia, and we could introduce like a feelings wheel or something to start like inception, or like just to evoke the feeling perhaps. I was just curious, like apart from like you just mentioned tracking, so that's a really good thing, and building up like a bank or a diary per se of different sensations or feeling, I was just curious, like this resourcing, if there's anything else that perhaps could facilitate sensing.
I think that's like a really cool thing to do, an emotions wheel, and you can I think you've met one neurodivergent person, you've met one, right? There's no kind of set rule book for us.
And I didn't mean to be like funny by saying, the feelings wheel or anything,
No. I actually think it's a great thing to do. Like I actually would be really, like try it out with some. I think there's very much a kind of try it out kind of creative playground that's needed. And that in and of itself is very healing atmosphere when you've had when you've had a life living with neurodivergence where you're kind of fitting in a framework that doesn't work for you. So the very atmosphere of creative play, and there's no one size fits all, that kind of talk that we bring in, and that kind of affirmation is actually healing of itself, and it will allow the individual, probably a big bit of relief in a lot of instances, like, oh, okay, I don't have to be like that, right? There can be many other ways to experience my experience. So with some neurodivergent folk that I work with, we work more in imaging. But a lot of the times with neurodivergent folk, there is this kind of, I will just take a step back. There is this kind of blanket philosophy that's put across that says neurodivergent folk, don't have access to emotions or senses. And actually, I don't think that's true at all.
Well, no, it's
Very
the
often,
opposite.
very often, exactly. There's so much. It's exactly that. There's so much. It's actually hard for us to kind of make sense of. So dependent on, again, you can try this kind of creative thing. So the feelings wheel could be really good because it can bridge language and it can be a visual. But I often spend a lot of time hanging out and getting curious about the imaging side of the 9-pointed star. Imaging is like the bridge between thought and sensation. So it can often be a kind of more comfortable place to kind of hang out when there's a lot going on in sensation. And over time, it can start to build that language, but just in a different way. So you would kind of like hang out in imagery. So you know, if you were to kind of, so I will use language like, if you were to have a blank canvas in front of you now, what would fill it? Would it be a color? Would it be an image? What would you put on there to explain your experience in this moment, right? And just follow kind of whatever is brought up, and kind of keep working in imagery. And occasionally, Sash, just occasionally, you can kind of go, what does that evoke in you? Right? So, you know, if someone brings in like a color, well, what does red evoke in you? And they might, you know, everyone's different. You know, it's heat. So what would heat evoke in you as an emotion or as something that you might feel inside? And you can start to kind of bridge that back through the imaging sense. You can also kind of work in imaging with, like, if that was, like, if your experience was a cartoon character right now, or like an animal, what would that be? Right? And you might get someone that says, oh, it's like a kind of, it's like a squirrel. It's like a squirrel's here. Oh, okay. How's the squirrel moving? Let's look, how's the squirrel moving? What color's the squirrel? All of that is actually deepening into their experience. It's just not maybe in the very generalistic language of sensing. And again, occasionally you can check in, like, what does a squirrel evoke in you? Oh, you know, it's like, well, this squirrel is, you know, it's really fraught, it's kind of running around, you know, and you can, you know, you can then say, oh, so the squirrel's kind of, it's fraught and it's kind of running around. And as you say that, just out of curiosity, is there anything that relates to that in sensing? There may or may not be, you know, just a very occasionally sprinkling just a little bit back into sensing to kind of move that bridge a little bit.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks very much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, bridged a few things for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions, Sash, that's come up on the back of that?
Not that I can think of at the moment, but I like how you introduced, you know, the imagery and different shapes and colors and whatnot, and then just sort of spending the time in perhaps if it's stimming or what movement comes up with that, you know.
Yeah, movement, great. Movement is another part of that. Really, really good. Yeah. And, you know, kind of, you know, as someone is stimming, you know, what's the stimming bring in? You know, what's that like? What's the quality of it like? You can slow it down. You know, there might be some kind of emotion or sensation under the skimming if you slow it down in a titrated way, things like that. Yeah, so great.
Also make some notes. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Hi, Amy, by the way. We were mid-flow.
Thank you. I was coming from another class, so glad to be here.
All right, nice to see you.
Can I add something
Yeah,
to Sasha's?
please do. Please do.
When I first got started with somatic work, and I was going through one of Peter Levine's books, I personally found a list of different sensations to be really helpful to look at, to provide more language and to kind of differentiate different sensations, like the difference between tingling versus like a bubbly sensation, you know, like kind of going through some of those to see, like, oh, have you ever experienced this, or do you know what that feels like? Or
Yeah, that's a super
yeah,
great idea.
I found that to be helpful for me, so that when it came time to like express what I was noticing, I had more language for it.
Great.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you. Making note of that too.
Thank you. Did anything else come up for you, Christine, as you were?
Yes, especially on this topic of suspension, because I've been doing some group vocalizing in person.
Yay!
And yeah, and one of the most recent sessions, pretty much everyone in the group was having a hard time being in their body. So I did bring in some suspension during the practice. But since people aren't, saying out loud what's happening, I didn't know. But afterwards, when they were sharing, each person was like, yeah, I was having a harder time in my body. I couldn't really turn off the thoughts, even after I had done the suspension part. So is that more something of an intuition thing to pick up on, or is there, yeah, because I don't have a ton of, I've been doing this for a couple months now, but still new to the group part.
Yeah, no, and it's great. Groups are challenging. They're also beautiful, because we get all the community healing and all that sort of stuff, but they're challenging when you're doing kind of sort of set piece type body drops and things like that. You do have to kind of work around the language for that and a little bit of extra kind of setup. So I would kind of like really, think back to your training. Like, we're talking about always, it's not getting in your body. It's about what happens in your experience when we invite this in. So really kind of like go to that as your, like always your home base, like rinse, lather and repeat that message. Rinse, lather and repeat that message, because you're going to have so many different types of people, Christine, who really want to show up for themselves, really want to do this embodiment thing, all that sort of stuff. And they're going to come with all different sorts of stuff, right? And so, one, rinse, lather and repeat that kind of message. And then, give some examples. So for example, we're going to do this kind of like, one suspension practice, let's say today. These are the different types of things that can come up. There's no one right or wrong. Somebody might feel really angry at being asked to do that. That's not wrong. What's happened is your direct experience has shown you something in your body that wants attention. So can you meet that anger? And you might want to say, if you meet anger, you might want to say, do you want to like growl, or just kind of put it into like, notice if the anger was an image, what would it be? So give examples like that. Some people might find themselves kind of completely just drifting off. If you do that, just notice that. Notice where did you go? And then bring yourself back, just very gently, noticing that your body's just simply done whatever it needed to do in that moment, and then come back. Some people might find that when they do suspend, there's a lot of emotions there. There's a lot of sensation, which can be a challenge. So if in that instance, I'm going to invite you to open your eyes and take in something pleasant for the rest of the duration. So you're kind of setting them up for there's no right or wrong, but just with a few different examples. And then at the end of it, you can say like, let's have some group shares, not to report back who did it right or wrong, because there's not, but just to see how different we all are and how different our experiences all are. And inviting it in that way can kind of just also be very healing. It's like, oh wow, yeah, we're all having these different experiences. So probably much of what you are doing, I suspect, but just with a little bit more attention to that kind of permission giving and setting up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does that help?
It does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What themes are you working on?
So I've been doing moon circles, so placed with the full moon and the new moon. So there's themes. I think that one was a full moon, and we're just trying to welcome and be with and express whatever's kind of being held at the moment. And
Are you doing it in a yoga studio or at your home, or where are you doing
it's at a farm school.
it? School. Do they have like what's your setup? Are they kind of sat up? Are they like laid down?
They get to choose. So there's either they bring a yoga mat. I have a couple different mats that I bring, and so
Yeah.
they can choose how they
Yeah. Yeah.
want to.
Yeah, great. Sometimes just that can be a little bit helpful as well, just as we mentioned at the beginning, like, oh, the body can kind of rest in that way. Great, sounds good. Sounds good. Anything from you, Amy? And kind of finish the formal bits of kind of case studies, but if you have any questions or anything that's coming up or anything that you want to share with the group on any of the shares.
I think I'll just share an update for myself as to how I'm moving forward toward practicing professionally. Is that thank you. I'm starting to imagine what it would look like for me to work with people like on a day-to-day basis, how my life would be different, times of day that I think I'd be taking sessions and things like that. So one of the things that I'm doing is starting to introduce like being in my workspace at a certain time and just trying with like an hour a day to let my body start to get into the rhythm of what it would be like to show up and to be um, doing work. So it's a way that I'm hoping to
That
kind
sounds
of in a resource way
Yeah.
help my body develop a rhythm.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So
rhythms are a really good thing to kind of key into when there's past chronic illness. So beautiful. I love that. What comes up for me, Amy, is we have such a wealth of experience within the community. We've got Amy Davies, we've got you, Hazel Cotton, who's just joined. All three of you come from a lived experience perspective and work or are gearing up to work in that area. So just a thought, like, if you wanted to kind of like reach out, and the three of you kind of get together and, do some sort of just shared best practice or be some support for one another. I think that would be really cool. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the suggestion. Yeah. I don't know if I've met Hazel yet, but I know of Amy. And
Yeah.
I give that some thought.
Yeah.
What also comes up for me too is I'm curious for anyone, what you may have noticed about how the rhythms of how you work, like how many clients you'll see or times of day when you schedule appointments or when you don't, or sort of what you've come to find is important about how you structure the time in which you work. I'd be curious.
I mean, I'll go first. I'm constantly shifting this because I just find my particularly now in the season of life that I'm in, my body is it has needs and you know I've kind of just been at this a long time now through like COVID and every other kind of major world thing that we're having, and I'm just feeling a lot in my body where I need extra space to really receive. So it's constantly shifting. Right now, I'm in a space where I see clients just 3 days a week in the afternoon. So I have the afternoon and early evening. So I have the morning free. Sometimes I have little internal like meetings or something, but generally I've got the morning free. Obviously we've got the course on the Mondays that I generally run, and then Fridays is prep day. But I've also just started to one day every 1 week every 4 weeks have no client calls, and have that as like reflection and rest and writing, because I was really kind of missing out on that. That's where I am at the moment. So I think what I would say is the biggest thing that I've learned is to be adaptable to your own needs, like set out, but I've had to learn to not give myself a hard time when, not let the perfectionist and the one that, kind of wants to overdo and all that sort of take over when my body's needs have shifted. That's just been my one biggest kind of edge and learning point. Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Anyone else want to kind of chip in? I'd like to hear if anyone does have anything they want to share.
I'm not there yet.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like just have I finished the course? Kind of. And I just been taking it slow, just building back into things. I'm in a similar situation, I think, with having to adapt and take things step by step as things fluctuate.
Thanks, Sash.
Jared, I just had a follow-up question. Curiosity. Do you have clients that schedule like recurring things, like I don't know, maybe once a week or something like that, that's sort of like standbys in the schedule, or do you just have them book like a session at a time? Is it both?
So I have some space that I keep free in my calendar for kind of mentees, obviously, and those are just kind of booked in as and when. But the way that I work, and I would counsel you to think similarly when you're working with folk with chronic illness, because there's often, as you know, so much underlying childhood trauma, and systems just need longer sometimes to kind of be relationally, nervous system and all that sort of stuff. So I work with people currently on a minimum of 3 months, and we schedule those in at the same time every week, apart from the weeks when I'm not seeing clients or they're not seeing clients. So there's like they'll have 1 week a month where there's no, but it's a set time every other time. And it depends on how you want to work, Amy. I feel like, that's, I think it really does depend on how you want to work. And again, there's room for you to trial and error things as well, I think.
Yeah, when I was coaching previously, I would do a series of, it was 15 sessions, and that could happen over a period of 3 to 6 months. And now I'm not feeling as drawn to proceed with somebody having like that kind of structure. I had a lot of structure that I created, and this work is so different. So it does make sense to me when you say 3 months, to give time for things to unfold and really build some relational experience together. And I think I'm just kind of curious, because hopefully as my nervous system strengthens, then I will have a little bit more consistency, or may not require the same flexibility that I've needed over the last 5 years, for example.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think of it in terms of how I'm setting myself up, and just even things like if I were to open up my calendar where people can book in, do I have a calendar that gives 3 months, or do I have a calendar that gives 1 month, for example? So it gives me a little bit more
Yeah.
flexibility in terms of how I'm building out my schedule.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, I get nerdy about setting up systems and things like that. Some of it brings me joy, and some of it's probably a trauma response, but all is well.
I wish I did. I wish I did. My little neurodivergent brain starts to think about chocolate cake and fairies. Can't cope with it.
I'm not too. Yeah. But overall, it feels good to be even curious about these things.
Yeah.
To take it of a growing capacity.
I really see that in you every time I touch base with you at the moment. So really celebrating that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
it. All right then, my loves. Shall we say goodbye for now? And I will see you somewhere soon.
Nice. Cheers.
Bye.
Goodbye,
Bye.
Take care.
everyone.
Bye.
See ya.